Morning, guys. This is the reading for Wednesday. I know there's been a lot of confusion as to, what you're required to do versus what you're not required to do. This is me being as transparent as I can be. Because this is an act of God, for this week, we do not have to show attendance. Um, so that means that I can give you assignments. I can put them in the grade book, but if they're going to affect your grade negatively, I can't. So I've had a lot of kids asking, like, can I get extra credit? How can I raise my grade? Especially with that critical analysis paper, a lot of people struggled. This is how to do it. Doing the discussion boards is only going to help your grade. Okay. Um, Regardless, when we come back, you are going to be expected to turn in the quiz that I gave you guys. You are going to be expected to turn in the timeline. Um, I am at a loss right now. I can't not do anything. If we do not come back to school after the 31st, they're saying it's going to be e-learning days. You will have to have attendance. Now that could change in 5 minutes. They could say, we are going to have an act of God through April. I don't know what's going to happen, but just for me personally, doing these things, these assignments, while you have the time, will help your grade. Okay? If you don't do them, it's not going to hurt your grade this week. That rule could change after the 31st. So I can't make you do anything. I can't. But if we don't come back to school on the 31st, everything we did this week, we're going to move on. So that's going to be a hole in your reading. And I don't want that for you. So, we'll be finishing Fahrenheit and going on to Cat on a Hot Tin Roof if we're together because it's a play. So I just want to make that very clear to you. Like, it's not going to hurt your grade, but it could help your grade. And this is a great book, and I'm going to be continuing to do my job, which is teaching you and reading to you and challenging you. And I hope that you will continue to do your job. But the number one thing I want you to remember, your health, your family, your family's health is most important. Take care of each other. Spend time with your family. Enjoy this time together because, like we've talked about, this has never happened before. You are very important to me. My content, I love what I do, I love what I teach, but you are most important. So I want you to be making sure that you're taking care of yourself and taking care of your family. With that being said, while I'm sitting here taking care of myself and my family, I also want to make sure I'm helping you be successful. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start at 60 today. I'm going to try to move a little bit because this is uncomfortable. Like my egg chair. Isn't my egg chair cute? This is my sunroom. It's adorable. It's like my favorite room in the house, and I don't always get to be in here. So we're going to be at 60. BD has just kind of talked about how things came to be. And what I think is really interesting that BD says is that it wasn't really the government that did all of these things. It was us. And one of the reasons Bradbury wrote this book was because the invention of television was coming out, and he called it the idiot box, and he said it was going to kind of be the downfall of civilization. And so it didn't come from the government down. It talks about that. Like, this idea that books are illegal or to be burned did not come from the government down. We stopped reading, and then they just kind of took advantage of our ignorance. And, our brains as humans, we want to be entertained. We want to be pleasured quickly. And books don't always give that immediate pleasure. And so that's kind of how it went. You're going to hear a lot about TVs in here because Ray Bradbury hated TVs. He hated the idea of it. Beatty also talks about on 57, he talks about Clarice, and he says she was a ticking time bomb, um, which I think is really interesting. A ticking time bomb. I want you to be thinking about that. So we are going to be at 60. And so the Beatty has just left the house. He's given a spiel. He said, Montag, every once in a while, every fireman goes through this. They question why they're doing what they're doing. So I want you to think about, are there any occupations out there today that the people at some point question why they are doing it? So just be thinking about that. Montag watched through the window as Beatty drove away in his gleaming yellow flame-colored Beetle with the black char-colored tires. Across the street and down the way, the other houses stood with their flat fronts. What was it Clarice had said one afternoon? No front porches. My uncle says they used to be front porches, and people sat sometimes at night talking when they wanted to talk, rocking and not talking when they didn't want to talk. Sometimes they just sat there and thought about things, turned things over. My uncle says the architects got rid of the front porches because they didn't look well. But my uncle said that was merely rationalizing it. The real reason, the hidden underneath, might be that they didn't want people sitting like that, doing nothing, rocking and talking. That was the wrong kind of social life. People talked too much, and they had to talk to think. So they ran off with their porches. And the gardens, too. Not many gardens anymore to sit around and look at the furniture. No rocking chairs anymore. They're too comfortable. Get people up and running around, my uncle says. And my uncle says. And my uncle. Her voice faded. I remember in college I took this sociology class, and we read this book called The McDonaldization of Society, and they talked about how McDonald's, specifically in the 80s and 90s, made their chairs uncomfortable for a reason, because they wanted to get people in, feed them, and get them out, and nobody wanted to sit at McDonald's where the chairs were uncomfortable. I don't know if you remember, but back in the day, the seating at McDonald's, there was no cushion, so it was just like this hard kind of plasticky, just really plasticky, no cushion at all. And so people were just it was just kind of like a rotating door, and that just reminded me of that really a lot, like that connection that nobody's supposed to sit and visit, right? Nobody sits and visits, nobody sits on porch, nobody sits and thinks, because that's dangerous. Montag turned and looked at his wife, who sat in the middle of the parlor talking to the announcer, who in turn was talking to her. Mrs. Montag, he was saying, that and this and the other. Mrs. Montag. Something else and still another. The converter attachment, which had cost them $100, automatically supplied her name whenever the announcer addressed his anonymous audience, leaving a blank where the proper syllables could be filled in. A special spot Wavix scrambler also caused his televised image in the area immediately above his lips to mouth the vowels and consonants beautifully. He was a friend, no doubt, a good friend. Mrs. Montag, now look right here. Her head turned, though she quite obviously was not listening. Montag said, It's only a step from not going to work today to not working tomorrow, to not working at the firehouse ever again. You're going tonight to work, though, aren't you? Said Mildred. I haven't decided. Right now I've got an awful feeling I want to smash things and kill things. Go take the Beetle. No thanks. The keys to the Beetle are on the night table. I always like to drive fast when I feel that way. You get up about 95 and you feel wonderful. Sometimes I drive all night and come back and you don't even know. It's fun out in the country. You hit rabbits, sometimes you hit dogs. Go take the Beetle. No, I don't want to this time. I want to hold on to this funny feeling. God, it's gotten big on me. I don't know what it is. I'm so damned unhappy. I'm so mad and I don't know why. I feel like I'm putting on weight. I feel fat. I feel like I've been saving up a lot of things, and I don't know what. I might even start reading books. They'll put you in jail, wouldn't they? She looked at him as if he were behind the glass wall. He began to put on his clothes, moving restlessly about the bedroom. Yes, and it might be a good idea, before I hurt someone. Did you hear Beatty? Did you listen to him? He knows all the answers. He's right. Happiness is important. Fun is everything. And yet I kept sitting there saying to myself, I'm not happy. I'm not happy. I am, Mildred's mouth beamed, and proud of it. I'm going to do something, said Montag. I don't even know what yet, but I'm going to do something big. I'm tired listening to this junk, said Mildred, turning from him to the announcer again. Montag touched the volume control in the wall, and the announcer was speechless. Millie, he paused, this is your house as well as mine. I feel it's only fair that I tell you something now. I should have told you before, but I wasn't even admitting it to myself. I have something I want you to see, something I've put away and hid during the past year, now and again, once in a while. I didn't know why, but I did it, and I never told you. He took hold of a straight-backed chair and moved it slowly and steadily into the hall near the front door and climbed up on it and stood for a while like a statue on a pedestal, his wife standing under him waiting. Then he reached up and he pulled back the grill of the air conditioning system and reached far back inside to the right and moved still another sliding sheet of metal and took out a book. Without looking at it, he dropped it to the floor. He put his hand back up and took out two more and moved his hand down and dropped the two to the floor. He kept moving his hand and dropping books, small ones, fairly large ones, yellow and red and green ones. When he was done, he looked upon some 20 books lying on his wife's feet. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't really think, but now it looks as if we're in this together. Millie backed away as if she were suddenly confronted by a pack of mice that had come up out of the floor. He could hear her breathing rapidly, and her face was paled out, and her eyes were fastened wide. She said his name over twice, 3 times. Then, moaning, she ran forward, seized a book, and ran towards the kitchen incinerator. He caught her, shrieking. He held her, and she tried to fight him away, scratching. No, Millie. No, wait, stop. Stop it, will you? You don't know. Stop. He slapped her face. He grabbed her again and shook her. She said his name and began to cry. Millie, he said, listen, give me a second, will you? We can't do anything. We can't burn these. I want to look at them. At least look at them once. Then if what the captain says is true, we'll burn them together. Believe me, we'll burn them together. You must help me. He looked down into her face and took a hold of her chin and held it firmly. He was looking not at her, but for himself and what he must do in her face. Whether you like this or not, we're in it. I've never asked for much from you all of these years, but I'm asking you now. I'm pleading to you. We've got to start somewhere here, figuring out why we're in such a mess. You and the medicine nights and the car and me and my work. We're heading right for the cliff, Millie. God, I don't know when to go over. This isn't going to be easy. We haven't anything to go on, but maybe we can piece it together and figure it out and help each other. I need you so much right now. I can't tell you. If you love me at all, you'll put up with this. 24, 48 hours, that's all I ask. Then it'll all be over. I promise, I swear. And if there's something here, just one little thing out of the whole mess of things, maybe we can pass it on to someone else. She wasn't fighting anymore, so we let her go. She sagged away from him and slid down the wall and sat on the floor looking at the books. Her foot touched one, and she saw this, and she pulled her foot away. That woman, the other night, Millie, you weren't there. You didn't see her face. And Clarice, you never talk to her. I talk to her. And men like Beatty are afraid of her. I can't understand it. Why should they be afraid of someone like her? But I kept putting her alongside the firemen in the house last night, and I suddenly realized I didn't like them at all. And I didn't like myself at all anymore. And I thought maybe it would be best if the firemen themselves were burnt. Guy! The front door voice called softly. Mrs. Montag, Mrs. Montag, someone here. Someone here, Mrs. Montag. Montag, Mrs. Montag, someone here. Softly. They turned to stare at the door, and the books toppled everywhere in heaps. Beatty, said Mildred. It can't be him. He's come back, she whispered. The front door voice called again softly. Someone here? We won't answer. Montag lay back against the wall and then slowly sank to a crouching position and began to nudge the books. Bewilderingly, with his thumb, his forefinger, he was shivering. He wanted above all to shove the books up through the ventilator again. But he knew he could not face Beatty again. He crouched and then he sat, and then the voice at the front door spoke again, more insistently. Montag picked a single small volume from the floor. Where do we begin? He opened the book halfway and peered at it. We begin by beginning, I guess. He'll come in, said Mildred, and burn us and the books. The front door voice faded at last. There was silence. Montag felt the presence of someone beyond the door, waiting, listening. Then the footsteps going away down the walk and over the lawn. Let's see what this is, said Montag. He spoke the words haltingly and with a terrible self-consciousness. He read a dozen pages here and there and came at last to this. It is computed that 11,000 persons have at several times suffered death rather than submit to break their eggs at the smaller end. Mildred sat across the hall from him. What does it mean? It doesn't mean anything. The captain was right. Here now, said Montag. We'll start over again at the beginning. That quote about it is computed that 11,000 people have at several times suffered death rather than submit to break their eggs at the smaller end, that comes from Gulliver's Travels. I mean, we could just liken it to what Mildred said, which is, this makes no sense. What about an egg? What are you talking about? I don't know. I could probably go deep into this and say, oh, it's about people would rather die than be challenged. It could be. I don't know. It's really interesting how Ray Bradbury picks excerpts from books that sometimes we can't connect with. I think he's challenging us in that way. I also think he wants us to be as confused as Montag. I mean, I'm confused. What does breaking an egg at the smaller end have to do with anything? Could he not have picked something beautifully written by somebody that could connect well to these themes? Yeah, but maybe he wants us to be confused, just as confused as Montag and Mildred are. Montag's in a pickle. He doesn't like who he is. He realizes that his job and the pride he had in it is sketchy. And that he's kind of been lied to and been lying to others without even knowing it for years. You know, I think at the end of the day, guys, this is a book that we're reading at a really interesting time in history. Every generation has their event that they can say, I remember where I was, right? Like JFK assassinated. I remember where I was. The entrance of World War II, Pearl Harbor, I remember where I was. I remember where I was in 9/11. I think this is going to be your I remember where it was. So I just want you to think about this book and how it could connect to what's going on right now in our society. I want you to work on that quiz. Hey, buddy. I want you to email me and ask me questions, and I want you to email me if you have anything you need. I'm just sitting at my crib right now, wishing I was teaching. Come here, bud. So, Jacob. This is my Jacob. And we are getting through it. So, if you want to see my crib a little, this is my reading sunroom, right? Don't you think that's cool? My husband wanted to make this into an office. I said, no, it's going to be pretty. Look how pretty. Look how pretty. Can you see? Can you see? Can you see? Look how pretty. My egg chair. Somebody made fun of me for my egg chair. I share my life with you guys because I'm human and I want you to know a little bit about me. So if you have any questions, guys, make sure you contact me. Make sure you're working on that timeline, the discussion board. I miss you. I want to have that connection, and it'll help your grade, right? So if you have any questions, email me, tcooper@mths.us, and I'll be back tomorrow for more info. Have a great day.